Well, commissions for me have been a process that have been going on over a number of years now. So they usually come through different agents, people like the Mal or other people.
Well, I'm a member of the Royal Society of Portrait Painters, and it's a fairly standard procedure when you're doing portraits that when you receive a commission, you will then meet the client.
You nearly always get to meet the client because the client wants to talk about their picture.
I wouldn't seek it out directly, but I feel like it's good for me when it comes, because it does push me in a different direction, that somebody else has identified that I would be able to cover this topic.
Well, it's a kind of two-way process because the kind of things that I'm into normally are historical research. So the client usually, he comes to me for that reason.
Obviously, when you're in a situation of commission, you're producing a piece of work which to a certain extent is to suit the subject's own requirements.
One time I had someone show me their cats on their iPhone, and they asked me to draw their cats, and I said no, just said no, I'm not doing that. They were black cats, it was a little iPhone, it was just a really bad idea, but they absolutely loved my work, so it just started a conversation, and actually they just wanted something by me.
There's nothing predictable about it, and you're in a very sort of bare situation straight away. A canvas which is has nothing on it, and you've got to make something happen, which is exciting.
One of the most interesting ones that happened to me was I met somebody at one of the exhibitions here at Royal Society of Marine Art Exhibitions about 8 years ago, who was Rear Admiral John Lippiatt, who had just about taken over as CEO of the Mary Rose Trust. And because we met at the exhibition, he said, well, come down and look at the Mary Rose. And so I went down to look at the Mary Rose, and he blagged me into producing 2 paintings which I had to donate to the Mary Rose together with all their rights subsequently to that. But he did serve very good coffee, so I didn't mind.
And then very little, and it changes.
Nowadays, the internet tends to be taking over as far as images being visible is concerned, but the Mal used to be literally the shop window where people could get to see your work live, and that's still the case, of course, because you can see images on the internet, but you can't see the actual physical thing and what the paint is like unless you come to look at an exhibition like this, which is why they're so important here.
The commissions that I take are commissions that will interest me and will take my work in a different direction.
And I've been exhibiting at the Mal since, goodness knows, since probably 1975 originally, so that's part of your portfolio. You know, I mean, the fact that your work has been visible is one of the very important ways that your work is seen by people.
It's very straightforward, really. You will run through a whole series of ideas in the initial stages. Scale of the work's important. The context of the work is important.
I mean, a client comes with a set idea of what they want to do, and then they meet an artist and realise that artists are crazy. So it's about that conversation.
So they come to you and they say, you know, with post-it notes in 6 different pages, and say, I kind of like this, and I kind of like that, and I kind of like that, but where do we go from there? But normally, again, the process is that the image emerges, the image that particularly interests them, or rather the story that interests them, emerges from research.
As an artist, I'm not used to having to work for other people very often, so it starts off scary, and then you have a bit of a freak out, and then eventually you come around to going on a journey where you discover new things. You find some kind of pleasure in a question that's been posed to you that you wouldn't have discovered.
Drawing's very important. You do lots and lots of preparatory work.
The way I do it, it tends to be quite well controlled from my point of view. So because of the nature of the work that I do, which is essentially a research process, there are a number of stages that the client gets to see, so the finished work is never really a surprise.
The recent commission that I did based on penguins, the brief was just handed to me. I was asked to do something on penguins. And it was as broad as that. And then I went away and thought about it.
Sometimes they flow and sometimes they don't. And there are a lot of people working in this area, all with different things to offer, so it's impossible to predict.
There wasn't guidance. They were very kind. I think they understood that they didn't want to hassle me too much. I think my face must have been a bit shocked at the idea of what they asked for.
You will be discovering things about them, and all that influences what you do.
Normally they're people that are, otherwise they wouldn't come to me. They're people who are very interested in the same subject that interests me, and they're not necessarily interested in my work.
I mean, they'd seen my work already, so they knew that they were interested in how I would deal with penguins, I think.
A commission I did for the RNLI on their then most famous living lifeboatman, who was coxswain Dick Evans, and he won 2 gold medals, which is the RNLI equivalent of 2 Victoria Crosses. And he was an extremely charismatic individual. And probably of all the people I've ever painted, he stays in my memory.
Normally you get on very well with the clients, while you're on the subject of what it is that you like doing.
That's one of the good things about getting a commission like that, is that you go off and research and you find out new stuff.
I mean, the big surprise actually, talking about commissions and so on, was Charlton Heston, because it turned out that Charlton Heston was an absolute fan of naval fiction and marine painting, and I got to meet him 3 or 4 times, and the most perfect gentleman you could ever wish to meet. But I didn't realise that he was a gun fanatic at the point that I knew him. It was only afterwards that I saw him up on with the National Rifle Association in America, and I realised that he had this other dimension which you didn't know him for, so you get surprises like that.